Hey everybody, what's up? What I just played was mainly based on major triads, and triads are one of the most important things that you need to know as a guitar player to take your playing to the next level and be able to solo over any chord progression and really nail it, make it sound like you know what you're doing. So in today's video, I'm going to show you my approach to learning triads, and today we're just going to stick with major triads because this stuff can take a bit of time to go through, and I'm going to show you really thoroughly and in depth the way that I approach learning major triads so that you can learn them the right way and take your playing to the next level. So without further ado, let's get started. So along with almost everything that we learn in music, we are going to start with using this concept based on the C root note. So we're going to be learning a C major triad today. Now, if you don't know the way that triads are constructed using three notes. They're 3-note chords. And the 3 notes in the chord are going to be a root, a major third, and a perfect fifth. And in this case, you need to know the notes that are in the chord. You need to know the notes that are in any triad or any chord that you learn on the guitar. And the notes in the C major triad are going to be C, E, and G. So C is the root, E is the major third, and G is the perfect fifth. So we're basically going to spend this video learning all the different ways that we can map out those 3 basic notes, C, E, and G, all over the guitar. So we're going to just start by learning what I call a root position C major chord. So we're going to play this shape right here. Looks like this. So we have a C note here on the 6th string, then we have an E note on the 5th string, and we have a G note on the 4th string. So C, E, and G. And this is exactly what I was just saying. It is a triad with the root on the bottom, the 3rd in the middle, and then the 5th on top. And this is what we call a root position triad. Now, this is the same thing that pretty much everyone learns in the beginning. But the cool thing is that now we're going to start diving into something called inversions. So what are inversions? Inversions is when we start rearranging those 3 notes, C, E, and G. So in this case, C was on the bottom again, but now we're going to start to see some chords where C is not going to be on the bottom, E is going to be on the bottom, or G is going to be on the bottom, and these are called the different inversions. So the next chord we're going to play is going to be a C first inversion triad. So we're going to take that exact same shape we just played, C, E, G, and now we're going to move that C up an octave. We're going to move it up to this C note that's here on the 3rd string. And we're going to keep the E and the G exactly where they were. So now we have this C first inversion triad looks like this. And again, notice that the E and the G are in the exact same spot that they were before. We just got rid of the C in the bottom and we replaced it with a C up here up an octave. For right now, you're going to notice that we're actually going to keep repeating this process of taking the bottom note in the triad and moving it up an octave, but keeping the 2 notes that were there the same. So this first inversion triad, it sounds really, really cool, and it's actually super useful for playing sort of in this Jimi Hendrix / John Frusciante style. You can do stuff like this. You can kind of embellish with other notes around that. That's kind of out of the scope of this video, but I just want to show you like this chord, it doesn't seem like much at first, but it's a really, really cool chord, this first inversion triad. Super useful. It sounds a bit more interesting than just your basic root position triad. So again, first inversion is whenever you have the 3rd of the chord as the bottom note. It doesn't matter if this is minor, major, diminished, augmented, or anything like that. if there's the third of the chord is on the bottom, it is going to be a first inversion chord. Okay, cool. Let's keep inverting. So we're going to keep inverting up kind of in this position. And by the time we're done with this video, you're going to know all your major triads all over the guitar fretboard, all your C major triads. So we're going to repeat that process one more time. We're going to take this E note that was on the bottom. So we had E, G, and C. Now we're going to move that E up an octave to the second string right here. And by the way, this is going to really help you if you know the notes on the fretboard super duper well already. It's going to make this process go a lot easier for you. So if you're interested in mastering the fretboard, learning the notes super duper well so that you can really master playing in any key, playing in any chord, then go to jamsville.com and check out my course, the Jamsville GPS Fretboard Fundamentals course. So we're going to play this next chord with this E here on the second string, but we're keeping G and C where they were in the first inversion chord. So this next shape looks like this. And if you notice, you can just play all three of the notes with one finger because they're all on the same fret. We have G, C, and E. Okay, so far we have root position, first inversion, and second inversion. So already 3 different versions of the same exact C major chord. Pretty cool, right? We got a lot more coming though. So the next one that we're gonna play is actually gonna be another root position chord, but it's gonna be up an octave. And tell me in the comments down below if you recognize any of these chord shapes, because you're gonna start to notice actually, this one right here, the second inversion we just played, kind of reminds me of the open A chord that everyone knows. But it's just kind of moved up 3 frets. Anyway, so we're going to move this G on the bottom of the second inversion. By the way, the second inversion is with the 5th on the bottom. So anytime you have any chord that has the 5th on the bottom, you got second inversion. Root position is the root on the bottom. First inversion has the 3rd on the bottom. And second inversion has the 5th on the bottom. So the next chord we're going to play is another root position. So we're going to move this G up an octave here to the first string. And we're keeping the C and the E where they were, so we get this shape. So all of the triads that we have in this position right here look like this. So you should be able to play through them. By the way, a lot of people ask me about this in lessons. I'm using something called hybrid picking here, which is basically I'm just picking the bottom note of the chord, and then I'm using these 2 fingers to play the other 3 notes. But you can just strum them all with your pick, or do whatever feels comfortable to you. You could just use nothing but actual finger picking. You could play it through like this with just a pick. You can also arpeggiate the chords. These are all really important things that you should practice when you're going through any triads, but especially these triads. And you should try doing them backwards as well in this position. And maybe even try figuring out some little patterns. Like, what happens if I skip a note and then come back to the note that I skipped and then repeat that process, sort of like this. Those can come up with actually some cool melodic patterns already that you can start to use in your solos when you play on a C major chord or any other major chord, because you're going to see we can actually move these shapes anywhere on the guitar fretboard. Pretty awesome. Okay, so what we're going to do now to move up to another position is actually we are going to invert in a slightly different way. So the way that we've been inverting is by taking the bottom note in the chord and moving it up an octave to another string like this. But now we're gonna invert along the same string set. So right now this root position chord we started on is laying over the 6th, 5th, and 4th string, but we're gonna stay on the 6th, 5th, and 4th string, and we're gonna find a first inversion, which is the next inversion up from root position. So the way that we're gonna do this is we're actually just going to take each of the notes in this chord and move it up to the next note in the chord. You'll see what I mean in a second. So this C note that's on the bottom, we're going to move this up to an E note. So now we have this E note here on the 6th string, and then we're going to take the E note that was here on the 5th string before, and we're going to move it up to G. And then we're going to take what was G before, and we're going to move it up to C. So now we have this chord shape, first inversion C major triad. And if you notice, it's the exact same chord shape they played over here for first inversion. So any triad shape of any kind that lays over the 6th, 5th, and 4th strings is going to have the exact same identical shape if you start it from the 5th string and lay it out over the 5th, 4th, and 3rd strings. So we have this now, our new starting point of this C major triad first inversion, which is spelled E-G-C. So now that we're in a new position, we're going to repeat the exact same process we did before. We're going to move this E up an octave to the 3rd string. And we're going to keep G and C where they were, and we're going to get this second inversion C major shape, which is spelled G-C-E. Again, the 5th is on the bottom. 5th on the bottom is second inversion. I'm going to keep repeating this over and over because you really, really got to have that in your head solid. Which inversion is which? First inversion, root position, and second inversion. Root position has the root on the bottom, first inversion is the 3rd, and second inversion has the 5th on the bottom. So can you think of another chord that you might know already that has the same shape as this? Actually, I can think of one. It's your open E major chord. It's actually the exact same finger shape, but you can include all these other open strings and stuff in it. But the actual sort of core of that chord is this small 3-note shape. That's actually an E major second inversion triad. But now if we move it all the way up here, it's a C major second inversion triad. So now that we have that second inversion, let's do the same process again. We're going to move that bottom note G, the 5th, up an octave. And guess what? Now we have a root position C major chord again. So this root position C major chord is exactly the same notes and the same sound as this one back here that you learned. The only difference in the sound is that since it's on different strings, the timbre of the string sounds a little bit different. There's a little bit more low end, a little less high end. So far we have this. And finally, we only have one more shape in this position, and that's going to be if we move this C up an octave to the 1st string, keep the E and the G where they were. Tell me what inversion that is. It has an E in the bottom, the 3rd. It's first inversion, right? Now this specific first inversion shape is super, super useful because it's very easy to play and a lot of cool riffs use it. Like for example, this song, tell me if you recognize this song in the comments. Yeah, that is basically a bunch of first inversion triads. There's 2 really obvious first inversion triads that are based on these top 3 strings, the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st string. One thing that's really, really important for you to also think about when you're going through these triads is you need to know where the root is in each of these chords. Now, ideally, you should know where each of the chord tones is just as equally, but in the beginning stages, it's going to be hard to think about all that stuff. So you really need to just pay attention to where the root note is in each of these chords. So for example, in this one, the root is on the 1st string. So that can be really easy so that you can move this around. So if you know the notes on the 1st string and you know this shape, you can move it to whatever chord you need to play. So for example, if I want to play like an A major chord, well, I just make sure that I take this shape and align it with the top string of A. And then now I have an A major chord. Or if I want to play an E major chord, I make sure the top note is E. And Now I have an E major chord. So let's review all the shapes in that position one more time. Again, make sure you go through each of these really, really slowly. Make sure you're paying attention to all of the notes and the chords and paying attention to whether it's the root, third, or the fifth. You really want to understand these and not just play through them mindlessly. This is not just some exercise for you to do and say, oh, look, I can play this thing. No, this is basically like the alphabet. You're learning this so that you can use it to make stuff and put in your own playing, not just to play it for its own sake, okay? So, guess what? We actually only have one more position to cover, and that will actually give you all of the triad shapes that you need to know to play any major triad that you want all over the guitar fretboard. Pretty freaking cool, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do the same thing we did before. We're going to invert this first inversion triad up this same group of strings. We're gonna find a new inversion, which is gonna be, if you haven't guessed it already, it's gonna be a second inversion triad. We're gonna find a second inversion triad starting from the 6th string with the 5th on the 6th string. So this one you're actually gonna see, we can play it in 2 different places, but it's gonna essentially be the same shape. So let's start off with playing it in the higher version. So if we move this E, we're gonna move the E bottom note of this first inversion, we're gonna move it up to G. Then we're gonna move this G that was on the 5th string up to C. And now we're gonna move this C that was on the 4th string up to E. Now we have this shape. And again, that's your C second inversion triad. And look, that's the exact same shape as the second inversion triad that was here. Exact same finger shape. Pretty freaking cool, right? Okay, now you already know the drill. We're gonna take this G and we're gonna move it up an octave to the 3rd string, to the next available string we have. And we're leaving C and E there, so we have this triad shape. And guess what? Look, that's the exact same fingering and shape as the first chord that I showed you in this video. Pretty awesome, huh? So we have this so far, second inversion, root position. Now we're gonna move that root of C up an octave to here on the 2nd string. And we have this new first inversion triad shape. This one is super duper useful, and you can actually use it to play a few different songs, like have you ever heard The Wind Cries Mary by Jimi Hendrix? You can actually play that using a couple different versions. You could also play like this. But this shape is really nice because actually you have another note that's directly to the left of the 3rd, which is actually the 2nd. I know that we're getting a little bit out of topic of the triads, but it's just really cool to point this stuff out along the way so you know what you're getting into. You know how you can use this stuff. It's not just something you're learning for its own sake. You can actually use this to make really cool sounds. You can do that little embellishment. You try that hammering on from D to the E, which is the 3rd. Okay, cool. So now we're gonna do one more inversion. So we're gonna move this E up an octave. And then we have this C second inversion. And can you tell me anywhere else you've seen a shape like that? That's right, it's your open D chord that you probably learned like in your first guitar lesson or first time you ever play guitar. The exact same finger shape, but the only difference is all the way up here, and it actually makes a C triad. So all our triads in that position are gonna look like this. So remember I said actually with that specific inversion, we can actually do that in a different spot on a guitar fretboard. So we can actually do it all down an octave. Because remember, everything once we get past the 12th fret on the guitar repeats exactly like it was down here. So we can actually take that shape that starts on the 15th fret of the 6th string, and we can start it all the way down on the 3rd fret of the 6th string. So there's our exact same second inversion, and you're going to notice, if you already know your open C chord, we're basically just playing different parts of that open C chord. So you can really see all the different smaller triad shapes that go into that open C chord that you already know. So we have the second inversion triad. Then we're going to move that 5th up an octave. And you're going to notice the fingering's a little bit different because now some of the notes are going to be on open strings. So you don't actually put your fingers down, but it's still the same fundamental shape. All of the notes are still the same distance apart from each other. So there's our just root position. It's C, E, and then G in the open G string. And then we can have our first inversion. We're going to move that C up an octave. And we have E, G, C, first inversion. Again, using that open G string. And then finally, we're going to move that E up an octave to the open E string. So now we can actually play this C chord. It's super easy. We only need one finger to play that triad. So that whole position looks like this. So let's review now all of our C major triad shapes, and they're going to be up there on the screen for you to practice. Okay, cool. Congratulations. You actually just learned all of your C major triads all over the entire guitar fretboard. That's a lot of different stuff, and already just with that information you have, you can do so much with this. First of all, now that you know those C major triad shapes, you literally know every single other triad shape, at least major triad, because all you need to do is just move these shapes around the guitar fretboard, and you can play any other triad, any major triad that you want. So let's actually mess with that a little bit. So again, the most important part for you to be able to do this easily is that you at least have a basic knowledge of the notes on each string of the fretboard so that you can identify where those root notes are in the chord, and then you can change the shapes over to be able to line them up with a different root note to play a different chord that you want to play. So we're going to do this in one more key, and we're just going to do a nice easy one that we don't have to move around so much to find. So we're going to try playing a D major triad. So if you know, the note C and the note D are a whole step apart. Particularly, D is exactly a whole step up from C. So by that logic, it's pretty safe to assume that we can actually take every single one of those C triad shapes that you just learned, and all we have to do is just move them up 2 frets, and then boom, we have all our D major triad shapes all over the guitar. So let's actually try doing that. Let's start from the lowest possible inversion that we can find of this chord, which is going to be this C major second inversion. So let's just take that, and we're going to move it up 2 frets. We moved it up 2 frets, and boom, now we have a D major second inversion triad. And the notes in this triad are going to be D, F sharp, and A. That's their root position, D, F sharp, and A. And the second inversion is going to be A, D, and F sharp. So D is the root, F sharp is the third, the major third, and then A is the perfect fifth. So now let's go through, and it's just going to be basically thinking exactly the same as you did on the C major chord, but just think 2 frets higher on the fretboard. And you can actually see right there, look, we played that exact triad from your open D chord that everyone knows. But now, anytime you see a song that has a D chord in it, you can say, oh, I don't just have to play this D chord right here. No, I can play this one. Or I can play this one. Or I can play this one. Pretty cool, right? So now let's try doing the same thing with our other position. So here's our C major triad root position that we started on in the beginning of the video. And now we're gonna move that up 2 frets. Boom, now we got our D major triad. You can see that's our D note right there. And we're just gonna play all the exact same shapes that we played before on the C chord. So now you have all these other options. Again, if you see a D chord in a song, you can go like this. Okay, so we're moving right along. We're gonna go to the last position of the D chord, which is going to be, we're gonna have a first inversion starting on the 6th string. So we're gonna take we can think of this in multiple ways, by the way. We can actually just know the notes in the D chord and just think of it as a D chord in and of itself, but I think for right now, it's a little bit easier if we just start back at our C chord, find those shapes, and move them up 2 frets. So we're gonna have our C first inversion from before, move it up 2 frets. And now play the exact same shapes that you learned before in the C chord. So D first inversion, second inversion, root position, first inversion, and back down. So here's all your D triads all over the guitar fretboard. And if you wanted to, you could even go really high and do the same one that we started with up an octave. That's a super high up D chord, right? Now you have all these different options, and you don't need to play the same boring old D chord or the same boring old C chord every time you see these chords in a song. So the last part of this video is I'm gonna give you some practice tips on how to actually practice them. I know I gave you a few practice tips before, but I wanna make one point, which is that you need to try to play these in time. And try to improvise using these full chord shapes, like playing 3 notes at a time. But also, these triads are just as important for playing single note solos. So you should actually practice playing in time, get a beat going, play with a metronome or play with a drum track. I'm just gonna play by myself and keep a nice steady beat going. So I'm gonna count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm gonna start playing some single note stuff with these triads. So we're gonna just stay in one position at first, but then the really cool thing is if you can start to try to play ideas that go across the different positions and maybe even jump around the fretboard. That's a little bit more advanced, but I know that you can do it. You just need to keep doing it over and over and over until you get really, really comfortable with these shapes, and you will be able to master these triad shapes. So here's a little bit of practicing of single note ideas with one position. We're gonna go back to C major for this one. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So as you can see, sometimes I was trying to do some like really big skips, and sometimes that's hard, and it wasn't like the most accurate thing to go like all the way from this C to this G on the 6th string from the 1st string, or on the 1st string from the 6th string. That can be really challenging. But again, this is actually so good for you to practice because it's actually killing multiple birds with one stone too. You're working on your technique a little bit, you're working on your improvising, and you're working on your triads. It's super, super duper cool. And now if I take another position like this one, I'll improvise a little bit with this highest position of the C major chord. So I feel pretty comfortable with that one. And remember, keeping that steady rhythm. That's actually what I'm thinking about more than anything, is keeping that steady rhythm. I'm not going like, no, that's bad. No, I'm keeping a nice steady rhythm. So now I'm going to try to combine this lower position and that higher position. I'm going to try to play some ideas and use both of them at sort of the same time or alternating between them. So what was something you saw me doing there? Using some slides in between the position. That can be super duper useful if you can find the triad note that's on the same string and be able to slide up to a different position and be able to continue off in that position after the slide. It sounds really, really, really cool when you incorporate slides into your improvising, because it just gives you more of a vocal quality. That's something that you hear people do a lot when they're singing. You hear them sliding in between notes. It makes it sound less rigid and more just flowing and smooth and connected. So those are some ideas for now, taking all that information that I just gave you and not just playing it in this boring exercise way, but I want you to actually practice improvising using these major triads. Now, we can get even way more advanced than this, and I can make this into a friggin' 2 or 3 hour long video, but we're not gonna do that. We're gonna leave it off there. So I really hope that you enjoyed this, learned something, got something out of this video, and I hope that after you watch this video, you never ever again stay stuck playing the same exact C chord and D chord. Now, what I want you to do in your assignment is learn these triads in every single key. So you should know C, C sharp, D, E flat, E, F, F sharp, G, A flat, A, B flat, and B major triads all over the guitar fretboard. It's literally just a matter of taking these exact same shapes you already know and identifying where the root note is, and then moving the shapes over so that the root note lines up with the chord that you want to play. If you do that, you are going to be just blowing away where you are right now. If you don't know these triads yet and you go through that process, you are going to be so happy that you did, and you are going to be impressing yourself with your playing every single day. So make sure that you subscribe to this channel if you want to see more videos like this, and go to Jamsville.com so that you can master the fretboard. This is only a little taste of the kinds of stuff that you're going to find in the Jamsville GPS Fretboard Fundamentals course. When you go through that course, you are going to have mastered the fretboard. You're going to know all the notes like in your sleep. You're going to know all your triads, major, minor, diminished. You're going to know all the different scales that you need to know, how to use them, and how to play them in different keys. And the best part about it is you're going to learn how to do things like I was just showing you, sliding up and down the fretboard, so that you never feel stuck in the same spot on the fretboard. That's a huge problem that a lot of guitarists have, and I had in the past, and I really hated it, and I was trying for so long to figure out how to get out of that feeling stuck in the box. So go ahead and check out that course, Jamsville GPS Fretboard Fundamentals course on jamsville.com. And until next time, listen, learn, and jam.